I woke up to find my Filipina girlfriend holding my, well, let's just say she had a firm grip on a very private part of me. It wasn't the first time. If you're dating a Filipino or thinking about it, there are some bedroom behaviors that might surprise you. This unusual habit is actually more common than you think, and today I'm going to explain what it means and why some Filipinas do it. This intimate gesture has deep cultural roots that many foreigners misunderstand at first. What seems unusual to Westerners often carries significant meaning in Filipino culture. I wondered, was this about intimacy, comfort, or something else entirely? This scenario represents a surprisingly common experience reported by Western men in relationships with Filipinos. The phenomenon often leaves men puzzled, especially when they discover through conversations with friends that they're experiencing a shared pattern rather than an isolated incident. The mysterious nighttime habit. Imagine this. You're sleeping peacefully beside your Filipina girlfriend when something wakes you in the middle of the night. As you become aware of your surroundings, you realize her hand is gently resting on your most private area. She's fast asleep, completely unaware, yet maintaining this intimate contact throughout the night. For Western men raised with clear notions of personal space, this behavior creates genuine confusion. The cultural dissonance raises questions. Is this a sexual advance, an unconscious habit, or something deeply rooted in Filipino culture? During a casual evening of drinks in Manila, Robert from Australia discovered the widespread nature of this behavior. I honestly thought it was my girlfriend's quirk. Then, somehow the topic came up with other expats. Nearly everyone in a relationship with a Filipina had experienced the same thing. We were all equally baffled. John, an American expat living in Cebu with his girlfriend for 2 years, shared, "The first time it happened, I thought it was just a random thing. But then it kept happening night after night. She'd be sound asleep, but somehow always find her way there. I was confused because it didn't seem sexual. She was literally sleeping." David, married to his Filipino wife for over 5 years, offers insight after finally addressing the behavior directly. "When I asked my wife about it, she was embarrassed at first. Then she explained that it makes her feel safe and connected. It's like physical reassurance that I'm there with her, even when she's unconscious." The mystery deepens considering this behavior isn't typically discussed openly. It rarely appears in dating guides about Filipino culture or in discussions about cultural differences. Instead, it emerges primarily in private conversations between Western men comparing relationship experiences. What motivates this behavior remains intriguing. The fact that it occurs during sleep complicates simple interpretations. Some men wonder if it's a form of possession, a way of claiming territory. Others question if it's related to relationship insecurity, a physical way of ensuring their partner remains close throughout the night. This revelation points towards security and connection rather than desire. The nighttime habit serves as a physical anchor, creating a continuous bond during vulnerable sleeping hours. The weight of a hand, the warmth of contact, these sensations provide subconscious comfort throughout the night. This cultural difference naturally extends to adult relationships, where physical closeness symbolizes security and commitment. The specific nature of the contact holding a particularly vulnerable body part represents an expression of trust and security. It communicates, "I'm entrusting you with my most vulnerable self." Filipino society values closeness and physical proximity extensively. Many Filipinos grow up sleeping in close quarters with family members, often sharing beds well into adolescence. Personal space exists differently than in Western households, where children typically have their own rooms and privacy is emphasized early. The phenomenon crosses regional and socioeconomic lines within the Philippines. Michael from Canada notes, "My girlfriend is a professional with a master's degree. When I mentioned this habit, she had no idea she was doing it. She laughed and said her mother once told her she did the same thing with her father. It seems to be passed down generationally. Particularly fascinating is how many Filipinas engage in this behavior unconsciously. The automatic nature suggests deeply ingrained patterns rather than calculated actions. During the deepest phases of sleep, their bodies instinctively seek this specific form of contact for comfort. This generational aspect points to cultural transmission rather than individual quirks. While not universal among all Filipinos, the behavior appears common enough to represent a cultural pattern. For Western men experiencing this for the first time, understanding the security-seeking motivation transforms perception. What initially seems invasive often reveals itself as a profound expression of trust and desire for constant connection. This nighttime habit illustrates how differently intimacy can be expressed across cultures. What appears strange through a Western lens makes sense within Filipino values around closeness. Not every Filipina exhibits this behavior, but its frequency suggests cultural significance that goes as casual habit, reflecting deeply held beliefs about how security in relationships should feel, even in the vulnerability of sleep. To understand this behavior fully, we need to examine it through attachment theory, a framework that explains how humans form emotional bonds from infancy through adulthood. This intimate gesture, while seemingly sexual to Western observers, represents something more primal: the need for security and connection during our most vulnerable state. While Western partners might initially misinterpret this behavior, research by Filipino sex therapist Rica Cruz reveals something surprising. The same women who seek this innocent form of security during sleep often fantasize about relinquishing control in their conscious, intimate life. Compelling contradiction that speaks volumes about cultural pressures and personal desires. Security and intimacy, understanding the psychology. The behavior represents a fascinating intersection of vulnerability and protection. Sleep is when we are at our most defenseless, and this unconscious gesture creates a tangible connection that persists even when consciousness fades. This isn't about possession or control, but rather about maintaining security through physical connection. Cultural differences in physical boundaries often create misunderstandings in cross-cultural relationships. Western societies typically emphasize individuality and personal space, with clear demarcations between your space and my space, even in intimate relationships. In contrast, Filipino culture places greater emphasis on collectivism and physical proximity as expressions of care and connection. Physical touch serves as a powerful anchor in relationships across cultures. Research shows that skin-to-skin contact releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which reduces stress and creates feelings of trust and security. This contact functions like an emotional safety blanket, providing reassurance even when words cannot. For many Filipinos, this specific form of touch during sleep addresses fundamental psychological needs that may not be fully met during waking hours. Rica Cruz, a prominent Filipino sex and relationships therapist with extensive clinical experience studying intimacy patterns, offers valuable insights into this phenomena. Her research highlights an intriguing paradox. Many Filipino women who exhibit security-seeking behaviors during sleep often fantasize about rougher, more adventurous sexual experiences while awake. This seeming contradiction makes perfect sense when viewed through a cultural lens. The security-seeking behavior during sleep represents an authentic need for connection, while fantasies about relinquishing control can be understood as a response to societal expectations that Filipino women should be gentle and reserved. The behavior also connects to broader patterns of attachment in Filipino relationships. Filipino culture emphasizes strong family bonds from birth, with multiple caregivers and extended family members playing significant roles in child rearing. This creates attachment patterns where physical proximity and constant reassurance are normalized early in life. This dual nature, seeking security while desiring freedom from constraints, reflects how many Filipino women navigate between cultural expectations and personal desires. The nighttime habit becomes a way of expressing needs that might otherwise go unacknowledged, while fantasies offer a psychological escape from limiting cultural narratives. Western concepts of personal space differ dramatically from Filipino norms. The American Psychological Association recognizes that personal space expectations vary significantly across cultures, with Western cultures typically requiring more physical distance than Eastern or Filipino cultures. Economic factors in the Philippines also influence this security-seeking behavior. The country faces significant income inequality, with many families experiencing financial instability. Physical security becomes a proxy for broader security needs: emotional, financial, and social. The prevalence of overseas work creates another dimension to this security-seeking behavior. With millions of Filipinos working abroad, separation anxiety becomes a common psychological experience. Physical touch during vulnerable moments like sleep can help alleviate the fear of abandonment that underlies many relationship dynamics in Filipino culture. This intimate gesture represents trust and security rather than possession. When a Filipina unconsciously maintains this contact during sleep, she's demonstrating a profound level of trust, feeling safe enough to be completely vulnerable while seeking reassurance that this safety will remain throughout the night. The Filipino concept of pakikisama, getting along with others, influences physical boundaries as well. This cultural value emphasizes harmony and connection over individual comfort, making close physical proximity a normal aspect of relationships. For many Filipinos, maintaining physical contact during sleep is a natural expression of closeness. So how should Western men respond when they find themselves experiencing this unique expression of intimacy? The answer begins with understanding rather than judgment. Recognizing that this behavior stems from cultural differences in attachment and security needs changes how it is perceived. What might initially seem strange can be recognized as a deeply trusting gesture when understood in its cultural context. How to respond: setting boundaries without causing offense. When cultural intimacy meets personal discomfort, a single conversation can either strengthen your relationship or damage it beyond repair. Imagine finding yourself caught between respecting her cultural expression and honoring your own comfort levels. This delicate balance requires skills most Western men were never taught. Consider Thomas, a 35-year-old American who recently moved to Manila with his Filipina girlfriend, Elena. After experiencing this intimate nighttime gesture for several weeks, he found himself increasingly restless and unable to sleep well. Though he understood the behavior wasn't sexual in nature, he felt uncomfortable but worried about hurting Elena's feelings. "I didn't want her to think I was rejecting her," Thomas explained. "But I also couldn't continue pretending it wasn't affecting me. I just didn't know how to bring it up without making her feel embarrassed." This scenario highlights a crucial challenge in cross-cultural relationships. How do you honor your own boundaries while respecting your partner's cultural expressions of intimacy? The solution requires thoughtful communication that acknowledges both perspectives. Approaching sensitive topics requires careful consideration of timing and setting. Choose a neutral moment, not during intimacy or an argument, to create space for honest dialogue. A relaxed weekend morning or quiet evening when you're both feeling connected provides the emotional safety needed for vulnerable conversations. When initiating this discussion, framing matters tremendously. Center the conversation on your feelings rather than making her behavior the focus. You might say, "I've noticed something about our sleeping habits that I'd like to talk about. I'm not used to this type of contact while sleeping, and it makes it difficult for me to get restful sleep." This approach avoids blame while honestly expressing your experience. The way you phrase your concerns significantly impacts how they're received. Instead of saying, "Why do you always grab me there?" It's weird. Try, "I'm not used to this type of contact during sleep, and it sometimes makes me feel uncomfortable. Can we talk about it?" The first approach risks shaming, while the second opens a door for understanding. Before expressing your discomfort, understand her perspective by asking, "Can you help me understand what this means to you?" Or, "Is this something that's common in your family or culture?" These questions demonstrate genuine interest in her experience rather than dismissing the behavior. As you listen, you might discover nuances you hadn't considered. Perhaps this gesture represents deep trust or provides security stemming from cultural experiences. Understanding these motivations helps you respond with greater empathy, even if you ultimately need different boundaries. Finding alternatives that satisfy both partners' needs is essential. You might suggest other ways to maintain physical closeness, such as holding hands, intertwining legs, or cuddling in positions comfortable for both of you. This acknowledges her need for connection while respecting your boundaries. Marco, a British man married to his Filipino wife for 3 years, navigated this situation successfully. When I mentioned feeling uncomfortable, Maria seemed hurt initially. Instead of dwelling on the discomfort, I suggested finding other ways to feel connected during sleep. We discovered that sleeping with her head on my chest gave her the same sense of security without crossing my comfort boundaries. Now we both sleep better, and neither feels rejected. Avoid negative reactions like laughing at the behavior, expressing disgust, or making her feel childish. These responses can create shame around cultural expressions and damage trust. Even if the behavior seems unusual to you, remember that from her perspective, it may be a normal expression of affection. Pay close attention to nonverbal cues during these conversations. Filipino communication often relies on indirectness and avoiding confrontation. If she becomes quiet, looks down, or physically withdraws, these might indicate she's feeling shame, even if she verbally agrees with everything you're saying. Joseph, from Canada, noticed his girlfriend Rena kept saying "it's okay," while her body language suggested otherwise. Instead of accepting her words at face value, I said, "I feel like this is bothering you more than you're saying. It's important we find a solution that feels good for both of us." That's when she opened up about feeling rejected, and we had a much more honest conversation. Successfully navigating these cultural differences builds relationships on deeper understanding and trust. By approaching differences with curiosity rather than judgment, you demonstrate respect for your partner's cultural background while honoring your own needs. The goal isn't to completely change either person, but to create a shared culture within your relationship that honors both backgrounds.